This is part 2 of the series of liabilities. And to go back to show you which definition I'm using, a liability as something disadvantage. Okay, now look, a liability doesn't only have to be a relationship, whether it's in a sexual sense, whether it's just in a friendship sense or in business context. A liability can also be a trait you learned by your parents or by your peers, or it can be how you were raised. A lot of people take pride that they were raised by their parents or by their families, that they have manners, they have standards, they have boundaries. A lot of people pride in their conditioning. Is that what it is? A conditioning. Look, that you say good morning, good evening, that you greet people when you enter a place, that's natural. Why? Because you show the people around that you care about their existence. You acknowledge them. That's a natural human need, to be acknowledged. So that's a good thing. But if you're dealing with folks that are negative minded and they want an excuse to dump their negativity, then it's better not to greet them at all. You know why? Because they will use the natural act of kindness of yours as an insult to them. They'll come with some stupid excuse in their head to be upset with you. So the conditioning to greet others is beneficial, but in some instances it can also be a liability. Okay? Another thing, you may have been told by your parents or by your peers that you never bother other people, that you always should leave people alone, that you should respect people's private space or personal space or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so this conditioning has its practical use. But is it correct? You are part of a community, and a community can only function if everyone does his or her part. So if you have a group of people that are endangering the community, should you, quote unquote, leave them alone to do what they want to do, if it harms the community? So let's say you have parents that are abusing their children, physically abusing their kids. Are you going to say, well, it happens between the walls of their house where they pay rents, so it's not my responsibility? Well, it is your responsibility because it's your community. Because those abusers, once those children are grown, who are they going to use to dump their negativity upon? And by the community not intervening, the community is enabling their narcissistic violence. And another thing, those children grow up, will realize that, hold on a minute, the community demands us to show respect, to follow the laws, all of that, but where was the community when we needed the community? Why does the community demand things from us, but they don't care about us? So then the community embittered those children, who are now adults. So now you have grown women and grown men with mental issues, and demons can take advantage of it. So not only did you neglect your human obligation towards your fellow human beings, but you also enabled demons. And what if one of those kids turned out into a sociopath or a psychopath that haunts the community? Then everyone wants to look at the sociopath thinking, who is this monster? But hold on a minute. How did he or she become a monster? He or she didn't come out a sociopath out of the womb. No. They turned into a sociopath not only by their own refusal to face reality, but also by how they were shaped by their community. They could only turn into a monster because the community enabled it. Now they're still a monster, okay? We're not going to deny that. But the community enabled the formation of this monster. Why? Because everyone was told, mind your own business, leave people alone. So that leave people alone BS is a liability. It's one of the main liabilities that enables violence in the world. Look, if there is drugs being made in a house, the police doesn't care that you're the one paying the rent. They will come break into that house where you pay the rent, and they will arrest you and you will lose that house. They don't care that you're the one that paid the rent. The rule is you don't make drugs in this country. If you do, you'll go to jail. Or if you stab someone with a knife, the police doesn't care that you're the one that bought the knife. You have no right to harm someone else with your property. So you can't even use your own property the way you want. There are conditions on it. Even owning property has conditions. If you own a plot of land and you sexually molest children over there, you'll be arrested, you'll end up in jail, and you'll lose the property most likely. So even ownership is a fiction that's only enabled by the community when you meet certain conditions. Okay? But despite all of this, common people are in this code to mind your own business. It's a liability because the governments of this world don't believe in this liability. They don't believe in leaving people alone. They know you need to supervise people, you need to administer people of the world, or else things get out of hand. Not because they project evil intention on the human population, it is because they know how reprobates are. They know that not the whole human population is reprobate, but they know that reprobates can cause a lot of harm, and that common people in general will enable reprobates because the common people often want to face things. The governments of this world know this. That's why they don't believe in this leave people alone BS. Yet common people believe wholly and are fanatic about this leaving people alone, minding your own business thing. And that's why narcissistic violence remains in existence, and that's why common people with this attitude enable harm. They enable child abuse, they enable pedophilia, they enable cycles of generational violence. They enable evil spirits, they enable Satan's rule over mankind. That's what they are doing. Because their thinking is messed up, their thinking is a liability. But they just can't see it, or they don't want to see it. It's one of the two. For example, this whole idea of being clear about what you want, it can also be a liability, because what you want is not always correct, neither is it always applicable. You need to be flexible with your will and with your attitudes. That's how you ought to be in life. But a lot of folks, because they don't want to deal with any frustration, when they're upset, they just act out. Or they show they're upset, or they demand people to stop. Or, look, there are times you should tell people to stop if they're doing something dangerous or something that's way out of line. Okay? But besides the dangerous things, beware with this urge to control people, to feel relieved. That's what the world calls setting boundaries. It's controlling others to be relieved. A lot of people see this as a great thing. It's not a great thing. It's a big liability. First of all, you assume you have the right to control others because you're upset. Secondly, you put your trust in your own effort. So this is pride. Thirdly, you have no power to enforce the compliance of others. So then you need to trick people into complying with you through threats or through manipulation or by plain violence. And that's no different than what a narcissist does. So now, to prevent narcissistic exploitation, you're now operating in a narcissistic way, and you are narcissistically exploiting others to feel relieved. But you can't see it. It's a liability. Self-defense, that whole concept of self-defense is a liability. But people often can't see it because they only look at the short-term advantage, which often even the short-term advantages aren't real. There are liabilities that don't even have a short-term advantage, only a perceived short-term advantage that people have concerning the relationship or the behavior or the method. I'm telling you, examine your expectations. Examine those you are in contact with. Look at the bigger picture to detect patterns, if there are patterns in operation. That's how you remain alert and you are a step ahead of the enemy. Too many people don't do this, what I've just explained to you in this video. That's why the enemy can trap them so easily in patterns, and before you know it, the enemy snatches them away. That's how it often goes. That's the main pattern the enemy uses in taking people out. That's also the main method criminals use when anyone takes someone out. When the criminals out there put a hit on your life, they can hire a hitman to do the dirty job, but a hitman, they need to pay and it may go wrong. So what do criminals often do? They set you up in a trap. And once you're in the trap, once you're in this pattern, they only have to wait maybe a year or two, and then you're shot or you're kidnapped. It's over. Look, the Most High wants you, believer, to be victorious. Being victorious also implies being alert and taking the proper actions in time. How do you know that you take a proper action? Because you are alert. Alert is not the same as paranoid. It's not the same as suspicious all the time. It's not the same as pathological distrust. No. Being alert simply means that you notice things. You look around you. And this is what you ought to do as a believer. Look, I'm going to give one more example of liability. This may be a common one. I'm going to give two examples. Let's say you just got your driver's license and you really want a car. But now you go through a financial difficulty in which you can't purchase a car. And all the other folks around you have a car and they're driving a car. They're having a good time. And you think, why don't I have a car? But then, a few years later, you realize you don't even need a car to begin with. You realize that a car would require gasoline multiple times a month. You have to pay insurance for the car. And that you need a place to park the car and store the car. So now you begin to realize, hold on a minute. Having a car would have been a liability onto me. And you also realize that with a car, you often get involved in traffic jams. And on the road, often accidents happen. Why? Because those other youngsters who got a car immediately after getting a driver's license, many of them used the car to go out on parties. One of them didn't drink alcohol, but often they got involved in toxic situations. Not because of the car itself, but because how they use it. And then you realize, you know what? It was a good thing that they didn't have a car back then. So the financial difficulty you encountered, it appeared as a curse back then, but that financial difficulty was a blessing in disguise to prevent harm. Well, let's use another example. Let's say you have some buddies, okay? They're not into drugs, they're not into heavy drinking, they're just buddies. There are what they call in the world good people. There are people who are good-hearted. Now you're walking by faith. Now you've become a target of evil spirits. So now, those same people who used to be good company for you are now a liability. Why? Because those people don't look at the bigger picture. So when the enemy comes with tricks to turn people against you, they can be used easily in this plot without even being aware of it. The enemy may even convince them that you have mental issues and you need to see a psychiatrist. Because you look stressed out. Because you notice that you are a target. It's true that you're a target. It's true that people behaving bad towards you. But those buddies, they don't believe in spirits or they don't want to think about spiritual things. So they look for a logical, scientific explanation for everything. So if according to scientific explanations, well, what they consider scientific explanations, you are mentally ill, even if you're not mentally ill at all, you're just alert, but if they perceive you as mentally ill, they will do the right thing according to their programming and call the police on you to get you into a mental institution. So Satan can then use them to trick you. That's why I'm telling you, examine those around you and examine your own expectations. It says for now, agree with Christ and be at peace.